A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist. A link is given in the video description. Episode 72. You Can Leave. Jack was vexed with the woman in his rearview mirror. It has only been several days since I last met her. How did she become so sharp-tongued? Jack's anger dissipated as his gaze swept past the aroma lamp hidden under the passenger seat. His eyes continued to gleam with hostility. Soon, this mouth won't be able to utter a single word. At that thought, Jack felt exhilarated. Don't you ever forget that it was my idea to develop this medicine, Ms. Jarvis. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have gotten so far in the research. He kept his composure and started engaging her in small talk to delay the time. Roxanne thought the car smelled of essential oil but quickly dismissed the idea since she could not locate the source. She ended up assuming the faint fragrance was Jack's car perfume. She nodded gently upon hearing Jack's comment. That's true. If you hadn't mentioned anything about it, I wouldn't have had the courage to begin the research. Anyhow, I depended on my own strengths and capabilities to develop the medicine and bring the idea to fruition. Initially, Roxanne was rather dubious about the whole matter too. She debated multiple times if she should brand the medicine under the Damaris family name because Jack was the one who proposed it first. However, Lucian rejected her idea without any hesitation. He justified that Jack merely gave a passing comment and had not involved himself in any parts of the research process. The success of the medicine was solely owed to Roxanne's efforts. He truly believed that Jack could have proposed that idea to anyone, but only Roxanne could have created the medicine. If I were to listen to Jack and give him credit for the medicine developed, does it mean that I could also do the same and share a crazy idea with any Tom and Harry, then request to be credited when the idea came true in the future? Obviously, this is absurd. The medicine should be exclusively branded under Roxanne's name along with her research institute. After Lucian knocked some sense into Roxanne, the latter became more confident and assertive when defending her idea in front of Jack. That made Jack absolutely furious. If it were not for the fact that the aroma lamp had not completely burned out, he would have opened the door and kicked Roxanne out of the car. Ms. Jarvis, you're truly eloquent and full of wit. Why didn't I realize your talent in the past? Teased Jack. Roxanne smiled but said nothing. Then, a brief moment of silence filled the air. Suddenly, Jack gazed at Roxanne and asked, if I were to give in and sell the medicine at $271 per box, would you be willing to work with Damaris Group? For some reason, Roxanne felt Jack's tone sounded a bit peculiar, as though he had a hidden agenda. However, she could not pinpoint what it was. No thanks. I'm sticking to my decision, she expressed her opinion without thinking twice. Immediately, Jack's expression turned grim. Why then, the aroma lamp had already extinguished itself. Then, there's nothing else for us to talk about. You may leave now, Ms. Jarvis, Jack uttered coldly. Roxanne nodded as she opened the door. Before stepping out of the car, she could not help but leave him with a heartfelt reminder. Mr. Damaris, I used to respect you a lot because you upheld the Damaris family's record of benevolence to good causes. I admired your superb medical skills and passion for saving lives. However, I didn't expect your ambition to be so different from mine. I thought that doctors should prioritize the needs of their patients, but all you cared about was making a profit. She sighed softly before getting out of the car. The livid Jack watched her leave with an expression of sullen resentment. Fallen sick afterward, Roxanne visited a nearby restaurant for lunch. Perhaps she had wolfed down her food too fast or was exhausted from work, as Roxanne fell into a daze and nearly fainted at the entrance. Luckily, one of the restaurant employees grabbed her in time and helped her to regain her footing. After saying thanks, Roxanne headed back to the research institute. She felt rather unwell for the rest of the afternoon. Yet, she pushed herself to complete all the required tests on the medicinal herbs. It was already nightfall when Linda came to check on her. "Dr. Jarvis, is there anything else I can help you with?" Linda followed the distinctive work culture from abroad and adhered strictly to the working hours. She would not take the initiative to work overtime if it was not necessary. Before knocking off, she would usually check on Roxanne if she was still in the research institute. If the latter did not need her help, Linda would leave work first. Roxanne shook her head and said, "Nope, I'm about to leave as well." Right before walking away, Linda noticed Roxanne's pale face. "Are you suffering from work fatigue, Dr. Jarvis?" Genuinely feeling a little unwell, Roxanne said, "Perhaps. It's a busy period for me, but things will be fine once the pharmaceutical manufacturing process is back on track." Linda was getting worried. "If the medicinal herbs are all good to go, I can take care of the rest." "You should rest at home for 2 days, Dr. Jarvis, for you don't look very good." Upon hearing that, Roxanne hesitated for a few seconds. Yet, in the end, she rejected Linda's offer. "It's okay, I'm fine. Don't worry about me." After putting away all the tools used for testing, Roxanne grabbed Linda's hand and ushered her to the door. "Come on, let's leave together. I'm ready to call it a day." Linda said nothing and followed her out of the research institute. As soon as they got out, Roxanne saw Lucian waiting for her by the car. He hurried over the moment he saw her coming out. Linda flashed him a polite smile before leaving. "You're here? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Right after Linda left, Roxanne felt slightly lightheaded and swayed on her feet. Frowning, Lucian quickly strode toward her and grabbed her by the arm. "What's wrong?" At that moment, she knew she was unwell. Despite that, she tried to keep calm so as not to make Lucian worry. "It's nothing serious. I overworked myself lately, but I'll be fine after getting some rest." Lucian scrutinized her intently. Moments later, he said with a gloomy look on his face, "You don't look well." Roxanne recalled Linda saying the same thing too. "Do I really look terrible?" As she looked up, she was met with his gaze, and she could see how worried he was. "It's nothing. I'm a doctor myself, so I would know if I were sick." She sent Lucian a comforting smile and added, "It's getting late. I bet the kindergarten has dismissed the children. Let's go pick them up now." With that, she went ahead and walked to the car. Lucian observed her from the back as his expression grew increasingly grim. It was not his first time seeing her knackered and bushed due to work. Yet, he had never seen her so exhausted to that extent. Not only did she look pale, but her lip color had also gotten a few shades darker. She looked completely drained of energy. The only conclusion he could arrive at was that Roxanne had fallen ill. She's just trying to force herself to appear strong because the pharmaceutical manufacturing process is finally showing some positive progress. At that thought, Lucian swiftly made his way to the driver's seat and drove off. I'll get Caden to pick the kids up. Let's go to the hospital. Emergency. Roxanne resisted right away when she heard where he was taking her to. I'm fine. How could I be sick when I was perfectly okay when I left the house in the morning? As she spoke, she checked her pulse in front of Lucian in hopes of proving herself right. She could tell she was unwell, but she did not take the symptoms seriously. All she wanted was to assure Lucian. Hence, she took her time to check her pulse thoroughly. Lucian slowed the car down while watching her from the rearview mirror. As time ticked away, the tension in the atmosphere became more and more palpable. Roxanne's fingers were still placed on her wrist as a solemn look appeared on her face. Something is wrong with my pulse. She tried to check further but to no avail, and it caused her to be perplexed. How are you? Any discomfort? Lucian could not wait any longer. Roxanne snapped back to her senses and gazed at him. Judging by his tone, she knew how worried he was. The man clenched his jaw tightly. How he wished he could fly her to the hospital immediately. Seeing so, her worries gradually disappeared as a warm and fuzzy feeling crept up on her. She gave him a comforting smile. It's not a big deal. I merely overworked myself. I'll be fine after having some traditional medicine for 2 days. She did not want him to feel anxious. Furthermore, Roxanne did not think that the hospital could identify the root cause. With some extra time on hand, she was more inclined to study her condition on her own. Since her symptoms were not serious, Roxanne thought she could take her time and check on her health. Conversely, Lucian remained resolute. It's best you get a thorough checkup at the hospital. A doctor can't treat himself, and there's no guarantee you took your pulse correctly. There's a hospital nearby owned by Queen Group. I'll take you there. Roxanne knew how worried he was, so she stopped insisting. If going to the hospital would make you feel better, let's go then. Subsequently, she placed her fingers on her wrist discreetly, trying to figure out what was wrong with her pulse. Lucian, on the other hand, accelerated all the way. Unbeknownst to Roxanne, her face looked exceptionally pale. As time went by, Lucian started to sense something was amiss. Roxanne's lips became darker and darker, to the extent that they turned purple. No, this doesn't look like a regular illness. She seems to have been poisoned. I'm going to call Caden and ask him to pick the kids up. He tried to engage her in a conversation while driving. Is there any message you want him to pass to the children? At that point, Roxanne's consciousness was slowly drifting away. Finally, she realized how serious her condition was. She felt so weak, and her eyelids were getting heavier by the second. Before she could utter one more word, her head fell toward the door, and she fainted. Roxanne. Lucian floored the accelerator as he struggled to reach her hand. He was shocked to find out how icy cold her hands were. Lucian kept rubbing her hands to keep her warm. We're almost there, Roxanne. Everything will be fine. I won't let anything happen to you. He did not know if the words spoken were meant to comfort Roxanne or himself. Suddenly, he thought of something and quickly whipped out his phone. He called the hospital and requested that all the medical specialists from each department be on standby. After hanging up, he still did not feel at ease. Immediately, he instructed his men to search for the best specialists in the world and bring them over by private jets. As soon as Lucian arrived at the hospital, Roxanne was rushed into the emergency room by the doctors and nurses. Nothing out of the ordinary. The hospital director was keeping Lucian company outside the emergency room, and he comforted Lucian by saying, "Mr. Farwell, all the best doctors in the city are here. Mrs. Farwell is going to be fine." Lucian ignored those words and kept staring at the light on top of the emergency room door. At that moment, images of Roxanne's face growing increasingly pale kept playing in his mind, and he felt utterly helpless. "I had to watch the woman I love fall unconscious, and there was nothing I could do. I don't even know what happened to her. This is the second time something like that has happened to her. The last time around, she almost couldn't wake up. What's going to happen this time? If something bad were to happen to her?" With that in mind, Lucian narrowed his eyes ferociously. "If something happens to her, I'm going after Jack. If Jack hadn't made life difficult for her, Roxanne wouldn't have overworked herself. None of this would have happened." As he was boiling with rage, his phone suddenly rang. Lucian quickly composed himself. When he was about to reject the call, he saw it was a call from Pippa. "Oh! I meant to call Caden and tell him to fetch the kids. However, Roxanne fainted, and I forgot about that." Lucian answered the call and uttered in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry, Ms. Ward. Please look after the kids for a while more. I'll get Caden to fetch them." Naturally, Pippa readily agreed. After hanging up the phone, Lucian called Caden and instructed him to fetch the kids. "Mr. Farwell, what if the kids ask about Mrs. Farwell?" After what happened the last time around, Caden felt he needed to get Lucian's opinion. "Even if I need to lie to the kids later, I can tell myself that Mr. Farwell ordered me to do so." Lucian went silent for a moment and glanced at the red light. In a deep voice, he answered, "Tell them Roxanne is going on a business trip, and I need to send her." Caden hummed in agreement, hung up the phone, and rushed to the kindergarten. Meanwhile, Lucian kept his phone and tried his best to stay calm while standing outside the emergency room expressionlessly. After some time, the door to the emergency room was finally pushed open. Lucian grabbed the doctor's arm and asked coldly, "How did it go? Is Roxanne awake?" The doctor was frightened by Lucian's aura. Upon glancing at the hospital director, the doctor stammered, "And not yet. We were about to do something to save her, but we found nothing wrong with Mrs. Farwell after we examined her." In other words, the doctor hadn't done anything after keeping Roxanne inside for so long. "All of you are trash. Why didn't you tell me earlier? If something happens to Roxanne, I'm going after all of you." Lucian fumed. The rest of the doctors who came out of the emergency room were all trembling with fright. Right then, the hospital director stepped forward and consoled, "Mr. Farwell, I've already looked for the best doctors in the world as per your instructions. They're still on the plane and will be here early tomorrow morning at the latest." "Tomorrow morning?" Lucian repeated. The hospital director could not stop himself from shuddering and changed the topic by saying, Mrs. Farwell has now been transferred to the ward on the top floor. Would you like to see her? Perhaps you can wake her up. Answer my call." 5 minutes later, Lucian arrived in the ward on the top floor. By then, Roxanne was already wearing a hospital gown as she lay on the hospital bed with her pale face and purplish lips. Needless to say, she looked fatally ill. Lucian was so heartbroken that he was having trouble breathing. After standing by the bed for a long time, Lucian finally found the courage to ask, "Roxanne, can you hear me?" He leaned over, enduring the pain in his heart, and touched Roxanne's cheek. Of course, there was no response from Roxanne. Lucian couldn't help but check her breathing to make sure she was still alive. Unable to bear watching her in that state, he turned around to order the hospital director, "The moment those doctors arrive, send them to me immediately." The hospital director quickly assented. Lucian didn't sleep that night. Instead, he was sitting beside the hospital bed and checking Roxanne's breathing every 10 minutes. At 5 in the morning, a few cars arrived at the hospital with the doctors in them. The group of renowned doctors didn't have time to rest, either. Instead, they were immediately brought to Roxanne's ward. As soon as they entered, they were intimidated by the icy atmosphere in the ward. Lucian was seen rising to his feet and making room for the doctors. Although he hadn't said a word, his presence alone was intimidating enough. The doctors knew they would be in trouble if something were to happen to Roxanne. Sensing that, the doctors were all acting with caution. However, no matter how they examined Roxanne, they came to the same findings as the doctors did the day before. They just couldn't find what was wrong with Roxanne. "You all are trash." Lucian lost his cool. "Buzz off. From today onward, Farwell Group is going to stop sponsoring your projects." Upon hearing those words, the doctors looked at each other. Everyone knew how wealthy the Farwell family was. Without the Farwell family's financial support, it would be hard for them to take part in international medical projects. Obviously, that was a tremendous blow for those renowned doctors. "Mr. Farwell, I think Mrs. Farwell's condition is extremely unique. Please give us more time to find out what's going on," an esteemed and elderly doctor voiced out. "I promise you nothing is going to happen to Mrs. Farwell for the time being. She's merely unconscious. For the time being." Lucian glanced at the doctor coldly before he asked bluntly, "How long is that going to be? Will you be able to give me an exact time frame? Even if you can do that, how are you going to promise me Roxanne will be fine?" The doctors were rendered speechless. The air in the ward felt as if it was frozen, and none of them dared to breathe out loud or leave. "Do my best, Damaris." Lucian gritted his teeth. For some reason, Jack wasn't happy with how Lucian addressed him. "Why are you treating me as a stranger, Mr. Farwell? I called to congratulate you. Jack must have something to do with this. Otherwise, why would he call at this time?" Lucian had a scowl on his face when he glanced at the lifeless-looking woman on the hospital bed. "I don't have time for your nonsense. Roxanne is unconscious now. Did you do this to her?" In response, Jack acted surprised and said, "Mr. Farwell, how could you say that? I'm a doctor. Why would I do such an immoral thing?" With that, he casually changed the topic by saying, it's just that I saw the press conference of Farwell Group's cooperation with the Research Institute. Hence, I called to congratulate you, Mr. Farwell. You've finally gotten what you wanted. You managed to win Ms. Jarvis' heart. Lucian narrowed his eyes angrily and uttered, as I said before, I won't let you take advantage of her. Roxanne is mine. Suddenly, the ringing of a phone broke the solemn silence in the ward. Everyone instantly glanced in the direction of the sound and saw Lucian's phone, which was on the bedside table, ringing. In an instant, everyone held their breath and waited to see who was dumb enough to call Lucian at that time. Lucian picked up the phone. Right when he was about to reject the call, he saw the name on the caller ID. It was a call from Jack. When Lucian saw the name, his heart sank, and he answered the call with a grim look on his face. Mr. Farwell, I didn't expect you to answer my call. I thought on the other end of the call, Jack's tone was respectful and disdainful at the same time. Indeed, it was a complicated tone of voice. How would you know what I wanted to do to her, Mr. Farwell? If Ms. Jarvis had chosen me, I think she would be in a better situation now. Don't you think so? Jack chuckled. Upon hearing that, Lucian tightened his grip on his phone and roared, It's you. What did you do to Roxanne? They were both smart men. Although Jack didn't explicitly admit to what he had done, his words confirmed Lucian's suspicion. Jack was the culprit. Roxanne trusted you. What did you do to her? How dare you? Lucian uttered coldly. Jack then raised his brows smugly and replied ambiguously, Why are you so rash, Mr. Farwell? I didn't say I did anything. Nevertheless, I'm still a famous doctor. Perhaps I can help Ms. Jarvis regain her consciousness. What exactly are you trying to do? Are you doing this because Roxanne rejected working with you? Lucian clenched his jaw. I don't know what you're talking about. Jack didn't want Lucian to have anything on him. I'm just saying I might be able to help her. No matter what Lucian said, Jack insisted he had nothing to do with Roxanne's current situation. At the same time, Jack kept telling Lucian he could help with the treatment. Therefore, Lucian had no choice but to suppress his anger and ask, What do you need to treat Roxanne? In a playful and mocking tone, Jack replied, Is this how you beg for help, Mr. Farwell? It seems like Ms. Jarvis isn't important to you at all, Mr. Farwell. At that point, Lucian's gaze was terrifyingly dark, and the veins on his forehead were bulging. What do I need to do to get you to treat Roxanne, Mr. Damaris? I'll do my best to fulfill your conditions, he enunciated. Jack laughed in satisfaction when he heard that. Who knew you would ever need to beg for help one day, Mr. Farwell? This is an eye-opener for me. After that, Jack uttered nonchalantly, however, I haven't figured out what I want in return. Give me some time to think, will you? I'll call you once I'm ready. With that, Jack hung up the phone. The tension in the ward was so thick one could cut it with a knife. Worse, Mr. Farwell, should we let the specialists examine her once more? The hospital director suggested fearfully. I don't want to involve myself in this mess, but the man before me is the CEO of Farwell Group. I can't afford to offend him. At the same time, the doctors behind me are internationally renowned specialists. I can't afford to anger them either. With that in mind, the hospital director had to steel himself and be the peacemaker. As soon as those words fell, Lucian turned to glare at them. The doctors shivered in fear and lowered their heads in silence. A few moments later, Lucian demanded coldly, "Check her body for poison." The hospital director and specialists were stunned when they heard that. "Does Mr. Farwell think someone has poisoned his wife? That's a crime. In hindsight, that's rather normal among rich people." The medical experts composed themselves and got to work. Within a short while, most of the examination instruments in the hospital were sent to the ward. The results were out shortly after. The experts were all exchanging glances with each other because none of them dared to report to Lucian. "Are the results out?" Lucian was livid because he saw them standing idly and keeping mum. Only then did the experts hand the reports to a younger member of the team. The hospital director and the team of famous doctors were trying their best to breathe quietly and stay inconspicuous. Lucian was filled with rage when he glanced at his darkened phone screen. Jack called just to assert his dominance. "Even if I were to do whatever he wants me to do, he might still refuse to treat Roxanne. Mr. Farwell, we've already gone through all the tests. There's nothing wrong with Mrs. Farwell." The young expert then lowered his head nervously. Lucian clenched his fists so tightly that his veins were bulging from underneath his skin. "Nothing has changed. If they can't detect any poison in Roxanne's body, what on earth is wrong with her? What did Jack do to her?" Something suddenly came to that young expert's mind. So he uttered cautiously, "The Damaris family is a prestigious family involved in the traditional medical field. Perhaps a traditional medicine practitioner can figure out what's going on here." Everyone had heard the conversation Lucian had with Jack. Since the ward was so quiet, they could even hear Jack's voice loud and clear. Besides, Lucian had made it clear when he was on the phone with Jack. That was how the experts knew the Damaris family was involved. Perhaps a traditional medicine practitioner could find a breakthrough. A dubious look appeared in Lucian's eyes when he heard that. In the end, he ordered, "Bring the researchers from the research institute here." The hospital director agreed without hesitation and sent his men to the research institute. "If traditional medicine works, I'm going to be free from this." The distance between the research institute and the hospital was a mere 10 minutes car ride. However, the people in the ward felt as though it lasted centuries. After a long wait, a few traditional medicine researchers finally arrived in their white coats, carrying with them the bitter scent of herbs. Linda was leading the group, and her heart sank when she saw the person on the hospital bed. Ever since she returned to the country, she became the contact person at the research institute. Early that morning, she had already received a phone call from the hospital before she went to work. When she heard something had happened to Roxanne, Linda immediately contacted all the researchers and brought them to the hospital. "When was she poisoned, Mr. Farwell? What happened to Dr. Jarvis?" Linda strode to the hospital bed, ignoring the tension swirling around Lucian. His head swiveled to look at her, and when he recognized that she was Roxanne's assistant, he reined in his temper. "Have someone from the research institute treat her." Linda didn't waste any time and promptly instructed a few researchers to treat Roxanne. They were all competent in medicine and were more cautious once Lucian told them to investigate in the direction of a poisoning. If that were true, the poisoning appeared to be critical, judging from Roxanne's pallor. There was no telling what would happen if they dallied. Everyone admired and respected Roxanne after the drug pricing incident and didn't want such an unfortunate mishap to happen to a great doctor. Furthermore, she had led the research institute to notable success after returning to the country. They performed another pulse check and found no conclusive results. However, the paleness of Roxanne's face indicated something was wrong. "We're sorry, Mr. Farwell, but we have no idea what's going on with Dr. Jarvis." One of the senior researchers apologized regretfully. "Dr. Jarvis' pulse doesn't appear any different from that of a normal person, but her complexion says otherwise." Lucian gave him a cold look. "No, Sherlock. Would I summon you all if she were fine? Bunch of..." He swallowed the words useless garbage that had almost left his mouth. No matter what, they were Roxanne's co-workers at the research institute, and he still had to show them some level of decency. She had seen how sick Roxanne looked when she was getting off work yesterday. Since Lucian had decided to contact the other people at the research institute, she knew Roxanne's condition had to be bad. However, she didn't expect Roxanne to be in such a dire situation. "We'll discuss further among ourselves," one of them responded gruffly. They gathered and spoke in hushed tones before presenting their hypotheses. "We can't rule out poisoning as a possibility in Dr. Jarvis' case, but we don't know what caused it. Her pulse is normal. It's as if she's only sleeping." "Could she have been dosed with sleeping pills?" someone asked warily. Linda denied. Dr. Jarvis' complexion wouldn't be so ashen if it were only sleeping pills. "Her lips are purple. Maybe the drug is affecting her heart," someone interjected. Several experts refuted, "We have checked, and there's nothing wrong with Mrs. Farwell's heart. Could it be nerve anesthesia? But it shouldn't cause her current complexion. Is the toxicity spreading in the blood?" The researchers and medical experts clashed together in a heated debate, and any suggestion was promptly shot down by the other party. Alas, no progress was made to diagnose Roxanne. "Mr. Farwell, do you know when Dr. Jarvis was poisoned?" someone suddenly inquired. Silence fell over the room. Indeed, if Roxanne was poisoned, then the timing of when it happened was crucial. Brows furrowing, Lucian rifled through his memory bank, remembering that she was fine before today. However, she had only been in contact with Jonathan and people at the research institute today. No one would have had an opportunity to poison her. So, when did Jack poison her? Dr. Jarvis has a background in pharmacology. How could she have been unaware that she was poisoned? The researchers were perplexed. Lucian's uneasiness grew as the conversation carried on. He rubbed his forehead after a long moment. "You should all know this better than me. I'll give you a day. I don't care what you do, but make her regain consciousness." Everyone hastily agreed, not daring to object. "Want to talk to Mommy?" The next day at the Farwell residence, the kids woke up and were worried when they found out their parents didn't come home last night. "Archie, let's call Mommy's phone." Benny nudged his brother's arm. Unease had been churning in the pit of the kids' stomachs ever since coming home from school yesterday. They recalled the last time something happened to Roxanne and were concerned when they didn't hear back from Lucian and her. Archie nodded with a frown, dialing Roxanne's number. Benny's face fell when the dial tone went on for a long while. What if something bad happened to Mommy? No, Mr. Lawson said Mommy is away on a business trip. Maybe she's traveling and can't answer the phone, Archie reassured. How about we try Daddy's phone? Why didn't he come home either? Benny's face crumpled as he nodded, and Archie called Lucian. In the hospital, Lucian saw Roxanne's phone light up with a call from the kids and glanced at her laying still in the hospital bed. He pondered for a moment and didn't answer the phone in the end, instead letting it ring until it stopped. Wake up! The kids are worried about you. He grazed his fingertips over her pale cheek, which didn't garner a response. Lucian's phone started ringing a while later. He fished it out to see it was a call from the kids. His brows knitted, and he fought the heavy emotions before answering neutrally, "What is it, Archie?" Hearing their father's voice sounding like normal alleviated the kids' worry. Benny and Estella crowded forward before Archie could respond. "Where's Mommy?" "I want to talk to Mommy," the little girl said plaintively. Lucian looked at Roxanne in bed, his gaze darkening. "She's on a business trip and isn't with me now. Didn't Mr. Lawson tell you that?" "But Mommy didn't answer her phone when we called." Estella pouted. His gaze fell to Roxanne's phone on the nightstand, and he turned it off before saying, "Mommy is very busy. She will call you back when she's done. You shouldn't keep calling and disturbing her." The kids nodded reluctantly. "Okay, we got it." Lucian sighed in relief at their compliance. "I won't be able to keep up with the lie if they continue their interrogation." "When will you be back, Daddy?" Benny asked cautiously. They had grown accustomed to having Lucian and Roxanne at home in the evenings and couldn't adjust to the abrupt change of their parents' absence. The undertone of hurt in their voices wrung Lucian's heart, and he softened his tone. "Something came up, and I'm a little busy now. I probably won't be home today. Be good and listen to Catalina. I'll bring snacks when I go home. Mommy is away, and so is Daddy." The kids sat on the couch, feeling somewhat despondent. They didn't want to disturb Lucian and Roxanne's work, so they had no choice but to agree. Benny requested without missing a beat, "Then I want desserts from the restaurant we visited last time." The weight in Lucian's heart lifted at the boy's innocent tone, and he agreed in a gravelly voice. "Show up." Lucian hung up the phone after he reminded Archie and Benny to take good care of Estella. His surroundings fell silent the next second as pin-drop quietness filled the air inside the ward. Gazing at Roxanne lying on the bed, Lucian was reminded of the heart-warming scene featuring the five of them having a meal together as a family in the dining room the other day. The significant contrast between the circumstances at that time and the current situation caused him to feel depressed. "Roxanne, when are you going to wake up?" He caressed her face with his fingers and leaned against her body, catching whiffs of her familiar scent while suppressing the boiling rage within his chest. "Jack Damaris! What have you done to her? If something terrible happens to her, I will ensure the entire Damaris household perishes." Lucian stayed awake beside her bed and kept Roxanne company the whole night. With bloodshot eyes and wearing an expression filled with barely controlled fury, he resembled a demon who had just emerged from hell. As afternoon approached, Lucian couldn't wait any longer. He kissed Roxanne's lips, got to his feet, and strode out of the ward. A few specialists and researchers were engaged in a heated discussion outside the VIP ward. "Have you come up with a conclusion?" Lucian, emanating an oppressive air, swept his eyes across them. No one expected him to exit the room suddenly. As a result, all of them were scared out of their wits. They remained quiet for a few moments before fearfully shaking their heads. Mr. Farwell appears more frightening than he did a few hours ago. We really can't handle this overwhelming pressure. You're all a bunch of good-for-nothings. Lucian chided sternly while giving off a malevolent aura. Another wave of terror washed over them. Before they could react, the specialists and researchers saw Lucian marching toward the exit with large strides. "Mmr Farwell, where are you going?" the hospital director asked with a trembling voice when he entered the building and ran into Lucian, who was wearing a grimace. Lucian stopped briefly in his tracks and instructed coldly, "I'm going out for a while. You all better take good care of Roxanne. If something happens to her, I'll hold you accountable." With that, he left without sparing another backward glance. He was at his patience's limit and urgently needed to question Jack personally about what the latter had done. Lucian drove to the Damaris residence after stepping out of the hospital. "Mr. Farwell." The Damaris family's butler darted out of the house to greet the newcomer as he thought Jack had returned. However, he was dumbfounded when he saw Lucian getting out of the vehicle. The Damaris and the Farwell family have never interacted with one another, so what is Mr. Farwell doing here all of a sudden? "Where's Jack?" Poker-faced, Lucian asked the butler. The butler's heart clenched instantaneously as he had a bad feeling about Lucian's arrival. He hurriedly said, "Mr. Jack is not here. Please wait here for a moment. I'll go into the house and inform old Mr. Damaris that you're here." After saying that, the butler was about to turn around and head back into the house to consult Hector about that matter. Unexpectedly, Lucian ignored him and strode right in. "Mr. Farwell, you can't do this." The butler trailed behind Lucian in nervousness. Still, he didn't dare to reach out and block the latter's way forward. Hence, he could only attempt to stop Lucian by repeatedly persuading him. Lucian disregarded the butler's words as only the images of Roxanne lying on the hospital bed filled his mind. "Jack will have to provide me with an explanation today." "Mr. Farwell." Mr. Farwell, meanwhile, Hector was watering plants in the back garden. He froze in bafflement when he heard the butler's panicky voice. "Mr. Farwell? Is he referring to Lucian Farwell? Why is that brat here? I don't recall the Damaris family having anything to do with the Farwell family. If I must be pedantic, perhaps the 2 episodes of conflict we had when doing business can count. Nevertheless, the Farwell family bested us on both occasions. I wonder what could have prompted his advent? Tell me, old Mr. Damaris." Lucian searched the mansion but failed to locate Jack. Then, he marched toward the back garden. Lucian greeted Hector distantly when he saw the latter. Hector placed the watering can on one side and nodded at Lucian. The butler's eyes were filled with guilt when he followed Lucian into the garden and met with Hector. Hector waved his hand. "You may leave now. I shall have a chat with Mr. Farwell." The butler heaved a sigh of relief after hearing that. He politely retreated into the living room. "I'll prepare some coffee for you." Subsequently, Hector and Lucian were left alone inside the back garden. Lucian scanned the surroundings emotionlessly and still didn't see Jack around. Hector uttered, "Why are you here today, Mr. Farwell. Standing before Hector, Lucian slightly relaxed his tense expression as his respect toward Hector persisted. I wish to meet with Jack. May I know if you can tell me where he is? Hector knitted his brows as a curious look flitted across his eyes. Supporting himself with a walking stick, he sat by the small table in the back garden. Then, he gestured at Lucian. Have a seat before we talk. Naturally, Lucian wasn't in the mood to sit down. Unfortunately, he couldn't refuse Hector's invitation, so he walked over and sat beside the latter. The butler placed 2 cups of hot coffee on the table for them. You said you're here to meet with Jack. May I know what's the matter? Hector was a worldly man who had lived a spectacular life. Therefore, he could keep his composure despite knowing Lucian wasn't there with friendly intentions. Forcefully suppressing his burning rage, Lucian replied solemnly, This is a matter between Mr. Damaris and me. It will be best if you don't interfere, old Mr. Damaris. You just need to tell me his whereabouts. The Damaris family was a century-old and prestigious clan, while Hector was a prominent and esteemed figure in society. Hence, Lucian decided not to lump Jack's behavior with the Damaris family. He reckoned if Hector were to be informed of his grandson's doings, the old man's health might deteriorate due to anger. Hector grew more unsettled because of Lucian's reluctance to come clean. You can talk to me about what's troubling you. Jack is a member of the Damaris family, so I cannot escape being involved in his matters. Our family upholds a stringent set of teachings. If Jack has done something wrong, I won't let him off easy either. Hector attempted to persuade Lucian. As seconds continued to tick by, Lucian lost his patience to wait any longer. He uttered coldly, In that case, I would like to suggest you demand Mr. Damaris' presence here, and we will chew over this matter before you. After seeing that Lucian had compromised, Hector had no choice but to agree. He immediately called for the butler and instructed him to request Jack to come home at once. The butler immediately executed Hector's order and contacted Jack. Meanwhile, Hector and Lucian continued conversing in the back garden. I've asked someone to summon him over. Can you tell me what happened now? Hector let out a sigh. I've never had to worry about Jack since he was young. That was why I let him take over Damaris Group. However, lately, it seems like he has lost his way. Lucian gazed at the old man. Old Mr. Damaris, since we'll discuss this matter before you later, I shall not keep you in the dark further. Mr. Damaris utilized an unknown trick to render my wife comatose. The hospital staff can't determine what's wrong with her, so I came here to look for him. An astonished expression spread across Hector's face after he heard that. He even stopped breathing for a few seconds. What did you say? She is not your wife. Your grandson, Jack, used underhanded means to render my wife unconscious. She has yet to regain her consciousness, Lucian replied coldly with an expressionless look on his face. Hector's chest heaved as he began panting heavily all of a sudden. It got so bad that he looked as though he would stop breathing at any moment. Lucian frowned as he got up to pat Hector on the back before handing him a cup of warm water. I didn't want to tell you about this at first, but you insisted on having us discuss this in front of you. I had no other choice. It took Hector a few minutes just to stop heaving. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he took the glass of water from Lucian. Is there some kind of mistake? Jack would never do such a thing. This is impossible, I wouldn't have come here if I wasn't sure that it was him, Lucian replied. Hector fell silent once again. Knowing Lucian, it's true that he wouldn't have shown up like this without being absolutely certain. That means Jock really is the one who did this. Right when the atmosphere in the back garden was getting incredibly tense, they heard a commotion coming from the mansion's entrance. The two of them turned around and saw Jack making his way toward them. Hi, Grandpa. You wanted to see me? After greeting Hector, Jack casually turned toward Lucian and said, "Oh, what a surprise to see you here, Mr. Farwell Jack." The look in Lucian's eyes turned incredibly gloomy when he saw Jack, and his body exuded an intense murderous aura. "Looks like you're here to see me, Mr. Farwell. How may I help you?" Those words had barely left Jack's mouth when Lucian stepped forward and grabbed him by the collar. "Stop playing dumb with me. What have you done to Roxanne, hey? What do you want?" Jack arched an eyebrow in response and shifted his gaze toward Lucian's hands as he asked, "Are you sure you want to take that tone with me, Mr. Farwell?" As Jack had complete control over Roxanne's life, he didn't feel threatened by Lucian's attitude in the slightest. He was confident that Lucian wouldn't dare do anything to him. Lucian tightened his grip on Jack's collar as he yelled, "It's funny you say that after what you've done to my wife. You'd better help her regain consciousness right now, or I will make you pay dearly." Jack pretended to be terrified for a few seconds before letting out a mocking chuckle. He then grabbed Lucian's wrist and said, "Oh, please. She's not your wife. I haven't heard of you two getting remarried, so she's just an ex-wife to you at best." Jack's face clouded over when he saw that Lucian had no intention of letting go. "Also, I would be more mindful of my tone if I were you. If you keep threatening me like this, I might get so scared that I end up forgetting how to wake her up. Just so you know, I'm the only person in the world who knows how to do so." Lucian's eyes were bloodshot as he glared furiously at the man before him. If looks could kill, he would have torn Jack to shreds in an instant. "If I knew this was going to happen, I would have told Roxanne to stay away from Jack ever since Colby tried to hurt her." Despite his burning anger, Lucian had no choice but to let go of Jack when he thought about Roxanne, who was still lying unconscious on the hospital bed. Sure enough, Jack became a lot smugger when Lucian let go of his collar. "See? That wasn't so hard, was it? Still, I am not very satisfied with your attitude, Mr. Farwell. As for Ms. Jarvis..." Powerless Jack was cut off mid-sentence when Hector hit him with his cane and yelled angrily, "You bastard!" The look in Jack's eyes was icy cold when he turned to look at Hector. "Grandpa, are you siding with an outsider?" Hector was hoping that he would be right about Jack being innocent. After all, he had watched Jack grow up, so he believed his grandson would never do something so heartless. Even with everything Lucian told him, Hector was still clinging to the possibility of Jack being innocent. It wasn't until Jack showed up and taunted Lucian that Hector finally believed he was guilty. Although Jack had carefully worded his sentences to avoid admitting to his crime, his attitude toward Lucian made it incredibly obvious. Hector was able to read between the lines and felt utterly disappointed in Jack. "To think that my grandson, whom I have worked so hard to nurture from a young age, would do such a horrible thing behind my back. Hector was so overwhelmed by the sudden realization that he didn't know how to respond. After hearing Jack threaten Lucian, Hector snapped out of it and whacked him with his cane. I am on the side of justice. What have you done to Dr. Jarvis? Have you forgotten what I taught you? One should only use medical knowledge to save people, not harm them. How could you do something so horrible? I'm disappointed in you, he shouted furiously when Jack questioned him. Jack was extremely displeased as he had finally gotten the upper hand against Lucian, only to have his grandfather beat and lecture him a second later. This is between us young people, so you should stay out of this. Anyway, it's really hot out here. I'll have the butler bring you indoors, Jack replied and summoned the butler. The atmosphere in the back garden was so intense that it felt like a battlefield, minus the gunfire and explosions. As the butler had been summoned, he had no choice but to make his way over. He then stared between Jack and Hector anxiously as he was unsure who he should take orders from. Hector slammed his cane down into the ground and shouted angrily, "Why did you come over? I'm still alive and kicking here. He is not the one in charge of this household." The butler shuddered as he nodded and went back into the house. As the tension between Hector and Jack continued to rise, Lucian stepped aside and watched on with an expressionless look on his face. Old Mr. Damaris did not know about the horrible things Jack had been doing behind his back. Now that he is aware, he is sure to interfere and force Jack to save Roxanne. Well? Start talking. What have you done to Dr. Jarvis? Mr. Farwell says she's still unconscious right now. What did you do to her? Hector shouted in a somewhat hoarse voice. I can't believe Jack would go as far as messing with Farwell Group. It's true that we are from a prestigious family in the medical field, but that's pretty much all there is to our family. There's no way we could ever stand up to a business empire like Farwell Group. If Farwell Group so much as decides to come after us, there would be nothing we could do about it. I think you should go get some rest, Grandpa. A man of your age shouldn't be worrying about these things. It's bad for your health. Jack replied impatiently. Hector raised his cane once again when he heard that, but he didn't bring it down on Jack this time. After all, there was no point in hitting Jack when it wouldn't change a thing. If you really cared about my well-being, then apologize to Mr. Farwell and wake Dr. Jarvis up. He used essential oil. Jack let out a cold chuckle. It is Mr. Farwell's actions that will determine whether I wake her up. He then shifted his gaze toward Lucian, who was standing to the side, as he asked sarcastically, Mr. Farwell, did you really think I would give in because you came to my grandpa for help? Asking an old man to help you get what you want? Since when did you become so childish? Hector got so mad when he heard those words that he started coughing uncontrollably. Shut up, Jack! How dare you behave so insolently when you're the one in the wrong? Everything I do is for the Damaris family. Jack insisted with a straight face. Realizing that Hector was about to collapse from the coughing, the butler quickly rushed over and helped him into the living room. Hector was frustrated that he was powerless to do anything about the situation. All he could do was point a finger at Jack and hope that he would repent before it was too late. Instead of checking on Hector, Jack felt relieved that there was no one left to interfere with his plans. He shifted his gaze back toward Lucian and said arrogantly, now that it's just you and me again, we can finally have a proper conversation. Jack sat down beside the table and crossed his legs elegantly. You said you would think about it yesterday, Mr. Damaris. Well? Do you have an answer yet? If yes, then go ahead and name your terms. Lucian snapped with a frown. Jack frowned in dissatisfaction. Mr. Farwell, do keep in mind that you're the one in need of my help right now. Is that any way to ask someone for a favor? The back garden fell into complete silence after that. Having gained the upper hand, Jack grinned smugly at Lucian as he waited for the latter to respond. After what seemed like forever, Lucian suppressed his anger and said, "What do you want, Mr. Damaris? I will do anything as long as you wake Roxanne up. See, none of this would have happened if you'd just spoken to me with this humble attitude while I was doing business with Ms. Jarvis." Jack let out a cold chuckle as he continued with a sneer, "Unfortunately, it's a little too late for this change in attitude to make a difference now. I'll need some more time to reconsider this." Lucian clenched his fists tightly and tried his best to remain calm. "Of course. After all, you hold all the cards now. There is one thing I don't understand, though." Jack arched an eyebrow at him. "Oh? What is it? When did you poison Roxanne?" Lucian asked while keeping his gaze fixated on Jack. Jack let out a disdainful snicker as he replied, "You underestimate me, Mr. Farwell. I'm the heir of the Damaris family. Lowly methods like poisoning are beneath me. What I used is far more sophisticated." Lucian gritted his teeth as he waited for Jack to reveal his answer. "I used essential oil. By slowly increasing the dosage, I was able to get Ms. Jarvis to absorb the required amount over time. That is how I achieved the desired effect," Jack explained nonchalantly. Dissatisfied with Lucian's unresponsiveness, Jack added, "I'll be honest with you here. With the exception of that one time you were present, I had the essential oil burning in the background every time I conducted my business with Ms. Jarvis. Unfortunately for her, she didn't notice what it truly was. In fact, she even assumed it was just a habit that my family practiced." Recalling Roxanne's naive response from a few days ago, Jack found it so amusing that he burst out laughing on the spot. That was the last straw for Lucian. He could no longer hold himself back when he saw Jack mocking Roxanne gleefully, especially after what Jack had done to her. Making his demands honestly, "I'm feeling a little bad for deceiving someone as naive as Ms. Jarvis." Jack was halfway through his sentence when Lucian ran up to him and punched him hard in the stomach. Jack's face went pale instantly as he groaned in pain and doubled over. Lucian grabbed him by the shoulder and shouted with a gloomy expression, "Do you even hear yourself? Roxanne trusted you as a fellow medical practitioner. How could you betray her trust like this?" Lucian felt his blood boil with anger when he recalled Roxanne arguing with him because of Jack. Jack was wheezing as he tried to stand up straight, but Lucian held him down by the shoulder as he continued, "You don't deserve to be a doctor." Jack let out a disdainful chuckle and struggled with all of his might. "I never wanted to be a doctor. Whether or not I'm a good doctor is none of your business. I'm surprised you had the guts to hit me, Mr. Farwell. Are you not worried about Ms. Jarvis anymore?" Lucian was livid with rage as he let go of Jack's shoulder. Jack was still rubbing his abdomen as he stood up straight, only to have Lucian grab him by the collar a second later. Lucian's grip was so tight that Jack could barely breathe. Name your terms right now. I am capable of doing just about anything, so don't play games with me. Lucian muttered through clenched teeth. Jack fell silent when he saw the vicious look on Lucian's face. A few seconds later, he broke into a sinister grin and said coldly, "Go ahead and strangle me to death if you want to. Just keep in mind that no one else in this world can save Roxanne except me." Lucian punched him hard in the gut once again. "You wouldn't dare." Jack groaned in pain but maintained a smile as he said, "Try me, then. I told you, I won't save her until I figure out what I want." Through the corner of his eye, he noticed Lucian slowly loosening his grip on him. After contemplating his options, Lucian shoved him away with a look of disgust in his eyes. Jack was feeling so gleeful that he temporarily forgot about the pain in his abdomen. "I won this battle against Lucian the moment he came to me. With Roxanne's life in my hands, Lucian will be completely at my mercy. I could tell him to get on his knees, and he would have no choice but to do so, I say. Of course, such instant gratification wouldn't suffice. Now that I finally have him at my mercy, I'll take my time and toy with him as much as possible. You can go ahead and start thinking about what you want right now," Lucian said coldly. "Oh, I want way too many things. The drug that Ms. Jarvis is researching after hearing my suggestion should belong to Damaris Group." The consequences faced by the Damaris family Jack was getting out of hand. Lucian's gaze turned dark as a wave of fury crashed through him. However, he struggled to contain the anger that bubbled up within him when he thought of Roxanne. He kept his face expressionless as he stared at Jack. "I believe you are willing to sacrifice these, Mr. Farwell. I'm not that greedy, so I will only ask for one thing," Jack revealed slowly. Lucian lost his patience and urged, "What do you want?" "I have no authority to determine the distribution of Roxanne's assets, but you can ask for any subsidiaries that belong to Farwell Group." Hearing that, Jack furrowed his brows in displeasure. "If that's the case, I'll have to think about it. Mr. Farwell, you should leave now as I don't think it's possible to give you an answer right now. I need to take some time to consider my options. I'll let you know once I've made up my mind." Jack Damaris. Lucian managed between gritted teeth, fighting back the urge to rip him apart. The more furious he got, the more pleased Jack became. "Don't worry, Mr. Farwell. I'm the only one who can wake Roxanne. If I'm not willing to wake her up, she'll be a sleeping beauty forever." He gave a cold laugh before adding, "Perhaps you'll be begging me to wake her up with a kiss eventually." Right after he spoke, a punch landed on his cheek. The force of the punch was so strong that it caused his head to jerk violently to the side. His cheek turned red and swollen immediately. Jack spat out a mouthful of blood and wiped away the blood on the corner of his lips. "Also, her research institute has ample room for development," Jack replied nonchalantly. With a greedy smile on his face, he met Lucian's gaze and continued, "Farwell Group owns a ton of subsidiaries. I'm sure you'd be willing to give up some of them for Ms. Jarvis' sake, right, Mr. Farwell?" Slowly, he turned back to look at Lucian coldly. "Mr. Farwell, it seems you are planning on giving up on Roxanne." The way he spoke was so matter-of-factly that it was clear Lucian's action had provoked his ire. Lucian glared at him. "Mind your words. Otherwise, I don't mind killing you now before exhausting Farwell Group's resources to find a way to save Roxanne. I'm certain that Farwell Group will be able to find someone to help her." Sensing Lucian's malicious intent, Jack felt a chill go down his spine and gazed at him warily. Jack knew Lucian wasn't just making an empty threat, as he was prepared to kill him anytime. Sensing that, Jack stopped acting all arrogant. However, he attempted to maintain his dignity by responding reluctantly, "I'll give you my answer by tonight." "Is that enough, Mr. Farwell?" Lucian nodded. "You'd better remember your promise. If I don't receive a response from you by tonight, I won't spare any efforts in taking you and Damaris Group down." With that, he spun on his heels and strode away. Jack gingerly rubbed his tender and aching cheek, his eyes burning with rage as he watched Lucian walk away. "How dare Lucian talk to me that way when Roxanne's life is in my hands?" Also, Jack cast a dark look at the mansion. He knew he couldn't let Hector stay anymore, as the latter had chosen to side with Lucian, an outsider, instead of himself. Jack ran his tongue across his bleeding gums. As he did so, an unpleasant, metallic taste filled his mouth, causing him to get increasingly frustrated. A while later, he headed into the mansion. Hector took his medicine after the butler helped him into the mansion. It took him a while to regain his composure. The butler kept comforting him from aside. "Old Mr. Damaris, Mr. Damaris is young and arrogant, so it's normal for him to make a mistake. You can reprimand him, but please don't get overly angry, as it can be detrimental to your health." "Recuperate, Grandpa, are you still upset?" As Jack entered the mansion, he couldn't help but overhear Hector's stern rebuke. His lips involuntarily tugged into a disdainful sneer, but he quickly composed himself before stepping into the living room. Hearing him, Hector instantly vented his anger at him. "Why are you here? Where is Mr. Farwell?" Jack answered, "He left through the back door." "Why would you want to see him? Is it not enough that you already defended him earlier? You bastard!" Jack's words were so sharp that Hector nearly started heaving in anger. Taking a few deep breaths, he tried to rein in his emotions before angrily shouting, "Was I defending him? I was trying to help you. If Lucian were to become irate, how would our family be able to stand up to the Farwell Group? You will be the one to suffer if Damaris Group is driven to its downfall." Jack pursed his lips silently as impatience flashed across his eyes. Since Jack was a young boy, he had always been subjected to harsh reprimands by Hector and had since grown weary of it. Can't believe he is still the same. What a stubborn old fool. What exactly did you do to Dr. Jarvis? She's Mr. Farwell's girlfriend, so we cannot afford to offend her. Besides, she's an excellent doctor. How could you harm her? Hector demanded angrily. He slammed his fist down on the table and firmly ordered, "I don't care what it takes." He sighed inwardly before adding, "No matter what, Mr. Damaris is part of the Damaris family. You should side with him, as he won't do anything disadvantageous to the family." Hector slammed the table in fury. He went against the Farwell family. If he manages to provoke Lucian, what sort of consequences will the Damaris family face in the future? You are to wake Dr. Jarvis this instant, or you will be dismissed from your position as the leader of Damaris Group. It was a critical situation, so Hector decided to protect Damaris Group since Jack refused to listen to him. Jack snorted icily after he heard that Hector wanted him out of Damaris Group. "You're an old fool, aren't you? I can't believe you're still siding with them." Hector's expression grew stern as he realized Jack was no longer the grandson he knew. "How dare he call me an old fool?" Jack walked to Hector slowly and said icily, "Have you ever considered the potential of having Dr. Jarvis as part of our team? With her expertise and skill, Damaris Group would be able to reach heights we never thought possible. By working together, we could create a formidable medical empire that would be respected and feared by even Farwell Group, let alone many other competitors in the industry." He made no effort to conceal his desire to achieve success. Shock crossed Hector's face. "Why you? When did my grandson become someone this ambitious?" "What? I'm doing this for Damaris Group's sake. You might not mind seeing the company coming to an end, but I refuse to accept that its journey ends here. I must expand Damaris Group. This is the perfect opportunity to do so. Even if I can't persuade Roxanne to join us, I must at least be able to acquire something from Farwell Group." There was a crazed look in Jack's eyes. "You must be nuts." Hector was panting heavily as he clutched his chest. His face was contorted in a mixture of agony and anger. Calmly, Jack retrieved 2 pills and fed them to Hector. "I'm not nuts. As long as I seize this opportunity, Damaris Group will be on the path to growth and success in no time." Left with no choice, Hector demanded, "Gather the shareholders of Damaris Group to discuss the matter. It's too important for you to make the decision alone." "No need for that," Jack told him before turning to the door. "Come on in." Confused, Hector turned to the door and saw 2 bodyguards clad in suits striding into the mansion. "Old Mr. Damaris isn't feeling well. Bring him back to Bellbridge so he can recuperate there," Jack instructed calmly. Exchange for the antidote. After leaving the Damaris residence, Lucian headed back to the hospital. Given her condition, he felt uneasy even though he had only left for a few hours. "I wonder if the information I pried from Jack is able to help the specialists wake Roxanne up." He sped all the way and arrived at the entrance of the hospital 20 minutes later. Lucian stepped out of the car and strode into the hospital, heading to the top floor. Despite racking their brains, the director and the specialists couldn't figure out what was going on with Roxanne. "Mr. Farwell." Hearing the footsteps, everyone turned to look at the door. They then froze when they realized it was Lucian. "Mr. Farwell is back, but we haven't figured out a way to save Dr. Jarvis yet." Everyone wilted when they recalled his dark expression. Ignoring their greeting, Lucian entered the ward to check on Roxanne. Zane, the director, quickly went into the ward after him. "Mr. Farwell, nothing happened to Mrs. Farwell when you weren't here." "Don't worry." Indeed, Roxanne seemed to be in the same state as when he left. Lucian couldn't bear to look at her anymore and turned to Zane. "I need to talk to the specialists now." Zane quickly assented. After they walked out of the ward, Zane glanced at the rest and said, "Mr. Farwell, the specialists are here." Lucian nodded and proceeded to tell them how Jack harmed Roxanne. "From what I discovered, Roxanne wasn't poisoned. Rather, it's the prolonged exposure to a certain kind of essential oil that led to the symptoms she's experiencing," he explained. Glancing at the rest, he asked, "Everyone, do you have any idea how to treat her now?" Hearing his words, the specialists started chattering among themselves. Knowing what caused Roxanne's condition would help them to figure out a treatment for her. Roxanne was Lucian's wife. If they could figure out a way to treat her, the Farwell family would owe them a favor. That way, they wouldn't need to worry about financing their projects in the future. Despite the sheer amount of specialists present, none of them were able to treat Roxanne. Obviously, Roxanne's condition was pretty complicated. If any of them were able to successfully treat her, they would become widely renowned for their achievement. Ultimately, this would be nothing but beneficial for them. After mulling it over for a while, they swiftly made up their minds. "I have a question." One doctor took the initiative to ask. Given that it is related to smell, it appears that whoever administered the poison to Mrs. Farwell must have been in close proximity to her. Did anything happen to that person? A slight frown marred Lucian's countenance as he replied in displeasure, "He's perfectly fine." As he seemed to be upset to hear that question, the doctor grew nervous. That means the perpetrator must have taken the antidote in advance to resist the poison. Antidote? Lucian's eyes narrowed icily at that possibility. No wonder Jack is certain that he is the only one who can save Roxanne. It turns out he has prepared the antidote and is now ready to exchange it with us. I will not show mercy since Mrs. Farwell was poisoned through inhalation. She might have inhaled some sort of medicinal herb, another doctor suggested. What kind of medicinal herb can it be? If they were able to identify the type of medicinal herb, it would be much simpler for them to formulate an effective antidote. Everyone started brainstorming and discussing the possibilities. The room quickly filled with loud chatter and the buzz of conversation. Lucian initially waited for them to come to a conclusion patiently, but almost 30 minutes later, they were still deep in discussion. Frustrated, he got up and entered the ward. The ward was eerily silent as Roxanne lay in a coma. Lucian walked over to the bed and leaned down to look intently at her. "Don't be scared, Roxanne. I'm figuring out a way to save you, and you'll be able to regain consciousness soon." With that, he gave her a comforting kiss on her lips as though she could really hear him. The kiss ended as abruptly as it started. Lucian then stroked her long silky hair and muttered to himself, "When you wake up, you will accept my proposal, and we will have a grand wedding to announce to the world that you are mine." After this incident, he wanted nothing more than to make Roxanne his wife officially. Lucian lowered his gaze to conceal the agony in his eyes. The hand he placed on Roxanne's hair was trembling slightly. "It was my fault. I should have known Jack was a hypocrite and asked you to stay away from him instead of helping you to negotiate with him again and again. If that were the case, you wouldn't have ended up in this state." Lucian recalled how they fought several times over Jack and went cold with fury. "If it wasn't for Jack, we would have been together by now." Lucian softly whispered into her ear, "He hurt you, so I will never forgive him. Even when you wake up and plead for his mercy, I won't show him any compassion. Don't judge me for taking this action." Alas, the woman on the bed didn't react in the slightest. Even though Lucian had openly declared his affection for her and had threatened to exact harsh revenge upon Jack, Roxanne remained still and silent in her bed. If her face wasn't deathly pale, others would have assumed she was simply sound asleep. Lucian felt compelled to admonish her for being too naive and trusting, first with Colby and now with Jack. However, he couldn't bring himself to blame her as she was already unconscious. In the end, he placed the blame on himself. When he was recounting his mistakes to Roxanne, the phone on the table suddenly rang. Lucian stopped talking and stood up to see who it was. It was a call from Madeline. He remembered Madeline was a good friend of Roxanne. In fact, she was Archie and Benny's godmother. Most importantly, she was a capable doctor. Lucian only hesitated for a few moments before he answered the call. "I will be here." Madeline began calculating in her mind. If she asked Lucian to go with them, then she would not have to spend any money on this outing. However, her happiness was short-lived. Roxanne passed out and is still unconscious. She's at the hospital now. When Madeline heard that, her expression froze. What on earth happened to her? Which hospital are you in? I'm coming over right now, she asked in disbelief. Lucian promptly gave her the address. Half an hour later, Madeline rushed in a frenzy, her eyes reddened with emotion. When she saw Roxanne lying motionless on the hospital bed, she could not stop her tears from falling. What happened? How did she end up like this? Is this how you take care of her? Madeline took one look at her best friend and immediately began to bombard Lucian with questions. "It's my fault," said Lucian solemnly. Roxanne, Madeline was not in the mood to listen to Lucian. After hurling more words of resentment at Lucian, she clutched Roxanne's hand and murmured, "Can you hear what I'm saying? Won't you wake up? If you keep this up, the children will be very worried." No matter how much Madeline begged and pleaded, Roxanne did not respond in the slightest. Finally, Madeline realized her efforts were futile. She raised a hand to wipe away her tears before looking at Lucian once more. "What's her prognosis? Did you get a doctor to look at her? What did the doctor say?" Lucian stared into the distance and frowned slightly. "I've sent for traditional medicine practitioners and regular doctors, but they've yet to arrive at a conclusion." "Roxanne, what took you so long?" Madeline grumbled once the call connected. "I finally got a day off. Let's bring Archie and Benny out to have some fun." Lucian glanced at Roxanne before responding, "It's me." Madeline was taken aback to hear his voice. She quickly recalled their relationship and teased, "Mr. Farwell, are you with Roxanne? Where is she? Do you want to join us to have some fun together? That's why I wanted you to examine her and see if you can find any clues." When Madeline heard this, her eyes reddened again. "The Farwell family has sought out doctors, and I'm assuming they're the world's best experts in this field. Even they can't figure things out? What on earth happened to Roxanne?" Madeline held back her tears and forced herself to maintain her composure. Immediately after, she began to ask Lucian about Roxanne's condition. "How long has she been out for?" "She passed out when I went to pick her up from work yesterday," said Lucian. This made Madeline agitated once more. "Then why didn't you inform me sooner? Do the kids know?" Faced with Madeline's questioning, Lucian could not offer any other explanations. All he could say was, "I merely told the kids that Roxanne was away on a business trip." Madeline let out a sigh of relief. "That's also fine. The kids are so young, after all. We shouldn't frighten them." Having said that, Madeline returned to the topic. Apart from this, is there any other information you can provide me with? Lucian then recounted the story of Roxanne's drugging once more. Upon realizing that Roxanne was drugged via inhalation, Madeline looked at her best friend, who was lying on the hospital bed. Her eyes were filled with pain. What a vicious method that person used! I doubt anyone would have anticipated being drugged like this, said Madeline. Roxanne was very trusting of others. Even if she woke up and found out that she had been drugged by someone else without realizing it, there was no telling if she would have learned a lesson. Madeline retracted her gaze from Roxanne and proceeded to question Lucian. What about the doctors you hired? Do they really have no clues at all? At the very mention of those idiots, a hint of displeasure flashed across Lucian's eyes. There's no conclusion yet. I can call them in and ask them to tell you what they're thinking of right now. Madeline nodded. Okay. I'll go talk to them myself. Don't worry. Roxanne's problems are my problems too. I'll do my best and try to find a way to cure her. Thank you, said Lucian. Madeline seemed to be a little unhappy at this. Roxanne and I have never been this courteous with each other before. Why don't you try to figure things out too? I'll be here keeping watch. Lucian hummed in response and turned to leave. Enlist his aid, he hurried over to the research institute. After the researchers examined Roxanne, they promptly went back to the research institute and continued their work there under Linda's leadership. Now that he had a lead on Roxanne's condition, Lucian naturally wanted to go and check on the researchers. When he arrived at the research institute, a group of researchers was conducting experiments. Only Linda remained seated in the office. Every now and then, she would look in the direction of Roxanne's workstation with eyes filled with worry. I wonder how Dr. Jarvis is doing? Just as Linda was worried, she heard some movements at the door. She immediately returned to her senses and turned around to look at who had just entered. All she saw was Lucian standing at the entryway and frowning hard. When Lucian noticed that Linda had looked over, he said, "Gather the group of people from this morning. I have something to say." Linda quickly realized that it had to do with Roxanne, so she immediately set off to gather everyone there. "I have a question for everyone here. Is there a medicinal herb that is only potent when burnt? All that person has to do is inhale enough of the residue, and when a certain dosage is reached, they will pass out." Lucian asked everyone present with a grave expression on his face. Most of the doctors at the hospital were experts in modern medicine and were likely not as exposed to herbal remedies. On the contrary, the researchers at the research institute had to deal with such herbs all day long. The likelihood of them narrowing down the list of herbs was far greater than modern medical practitioners. Upon hearing what Lucian said, everyone was taken aback. "Do you mean that Dr. Jarvis inhaled smoke or something from these herbs? Is that how she ended up like this?" asked someone cautiously. Lucian nodded. Everyone was shocked when they got the news. Soon, the room was abuzz with wild guesses. In the end, they narrowed it down to 4 or 5 possibilities. However, they still needed a more detailed examination of Roxanne to pinpoint the exact herb. They needed to draw some blood and test it to identify which components were present in her blood work. Unfortunately, when everyone looked at Lucian standing so fiercely before them, nobody dared to say anything. "What's the matter?" asked Lucian coldly. He could sense their discomfort. Everyone present suddenly became anxious. Finally, someone stood apart from the group and said, "Well, we need some blood from Dr. Jarvis for testing. I wonder if that's okay with you, Mr. Farwell." Lucian frowned slightly. Everyone was startled and quickly lowered their heads. After a while, they heard Lucian reply in a deep voice, "As long as you can find a cure, that is permissible. How much do you need? I'll have the hospital draw Roxanne's blood and send it over here." Research institutes had more research equipment than hospitals, after all. The researchers then responded with how much they needed. Lucian went back to his office, made a call to Madeline, and explained the situation. The researchers made their way back to the conference room to continue determining the most likely herb. Seemingly having thought of something, Linda made her way to Lucian's office. Lucian had just gotten off the phone when he heard a knock outside his door. Linda stood by the doorway and said respectfully, "Mr. Farwell, I have an idea of how we can deal with Dr. Jarvis' condition." Lucian frowned. "Go on." "As far as I'm aware, Dr. Galloway's research on herbs is the best we have in our research institute. Maybe we can enlist his aid in finding a cure for Dr. Jarvis." When Colby was abroad, she had seen Harvey praise Colby's contributions to herbal medicine research numerous times. Having said that, Linda could feel her heart pounding in her chest when Lucian stayed silent for the longest time. "A lesson that was a mere suggestion on my part," said Linda hurriedly. "We also have other esteemed doctors in the Research Institute. I believe they will find a solution to this problem." Linda had been abroad then, but when she returned to the Research Institute, she had heard all the gossip about the things Colby had done to Roxanne. The last time Roxanne was rendered unconscious, it was Colby's fault. "I don't think Mr. Farwell is going to trust this guy. How on earth could I have made that suggestion, of all things?" Linda nearly burst into tears over her own stupidity. Just as her mind was racing over how to remedy the situation, she heard Lucian's solemn reply. "I understand." Linda was stunned. "He understands? What does he understand? Is there anything else?" asked Lucian coldly. Linda quickly shook her head. "No. Please be at ease. I'm certain that plenty of other doctors are capable of doing what Dr. Galloway does. I'll liaise with experts from abroad and ask them to come up with something. Dr. Jarvis studied under Dr. Lambert, so we have a network to reach out to. I'm sure they will help." Lucian nodded in response. "I'll leave this to you, then. If they're able to help, I will be sure to reward you for your efforts when Roxanne recovers." "This is what I should do," said Linda firmly. After all, she had been working together with Roxanne since Roxanne went abroad. To Linda, Roxanne was more than a leader. She saw Roxanne as a friend. It was therefore fitting that she put some effort into Roxanne's care now that she was ill. Lucian understood where Linda was coming from and thanked her again. "Regardless of what happens, I should thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll leave you to your work. I have other matters to attend to." With that, Lucian turned on his heel and left. After leaving the Research Institute, he sat in the car and began tapping the steering wheel lightly with his fingers. His eyes were filled with hesitation. Colby Galloway. According to Linda, if this man can truly distinguish the properties of medicinal herbs and can find a way to cure Roxanne, then maybe I should pay him a visit after all. However, Colby had nearly caused Roxanne's death the last time. When Lucian thought of this, his gaze quickly turned hostile. I don't know if I can hold back from tearing him to shreds with my bare hands if I see him again. Lucian began to struggle with his hesitation and doubt. After a certain amount of time, he finally managed to make up his mind. He slowly started the car and drove toward the prison on the outskirts of the city. The most important thing now is for Roxanne to be cured. Even if it's only a small chance, I have to try. The last time Roxanne went into a coma, she had been poisoned. Colby was sentenced to 1.5 years in prison and was currently serving his sentence now. Lucian called a friend on the way and asked them to arrange a meeting as soon as possible. When he arrived at the entrance to the prison, there were already people waiting to receive him. "Mr. Farwell, we've brought out Mr. Galloway. He's waiting for you in the meeting room." The prison warden seemed to be very respectful. Lucian gave the man a slight nod. "I appreciate it." The pair stopped at the entrance of the meeting room. Lucian glanced through the window. He could clearly see Colby sitting inside with his hair shaved down to 1 inch or so. Colby looked haggard as he sat in there listlessly. Behind him was a prison warden standing not far from him. "I dare say that a few months in prison has definitely taught him a lesson." After observing the situation in the room, Lucian strode in. In the meeting room, Colby could feel nothing but suspicion in his heart. He did not have friends or family. Having been imprisoned for so long, no one had ever visited him. Yet, he was suddenly ordered to meet someone without knowing what the meeting was for. Roxanne's face flashed in the recesses of his mind. "Hypocrite, it's been a while, Dr. Galloway." Lucian came in from the door, looking down at him from above. Colby's expression changed suddenly. He looked at the door grimly when Lucian walked in. "Lucian Farwell." Colby glared at Lucian. "Why are you here? Did you come here to gloat? Don't think that just because Dr. Jarvis doesn't like me that she will be together with you. Deep down, you're nothing but trash to her." Colby had stopped having any access to information the day he went to prison. Back then, Roxanne was still in conflict with Lucian. Colby merely thought that Roxanne held a grudge because of what happened 6 years ago. Displeasure flashed in Lucian's eyes, but he quickly suppressed it. He walked in slowly and pulled out a chair in front of Colby before taking a seat. Colby's hands and feet were in cuffs. He was trapped behind the table, unable to move. All he could do was glare daggers at Lucian from where he sat. "If not for you, I wouldn't have ended up here. Yet, you still have the audacity to show up before me." Lucian frowned slightly, quite upset at what Colby said. However, he thought of the purpose behind his visit and chose to keep his anger in check. "Dr. Galloway, there's no need for you to be so angry. I'm not here to laugh at you, nor am I here to pick a fight." Lucian fixed his gaze pointedly at the man in front of him, trying to gauge the latter's trustworthiness. Colby met Lucian's gaze and gradually furrowed his brows. His heart was filled with doubt. He vehemently shut his eyes and opened them again. This time, the only thing he felt was self-loathing. Apart from that prior incident, Colby could not think of anything that could link him to Lucian. After a long time, Lucian finally spoke once more. Something happened to Roxanne. Those words hit Colby like a bolt of lightning. What did you say? His eyes were full of disbelief, and his face was contorted. Was it you? You couldn't have her, and then you. Even though he had committed an atrocity toward Roxanne, it was merely an accident. In fact, he never intended for it to happen. Besides, he would never allow anyone to hurt Roxanne. When Lucian saw Colby's reaction, he decided to let his guard down a little. If it were me, I wouldn't be here right now, said Lucian solemnly. Colby went quiet for a while, contemplating the situation. Very quickly, he arrived at a conclusion. Was it Jack? Apart from Jack, Colby could think of nobody else. He deduced that Jack must have used traditional medicine on Roxanne. Otherwise, why else would Lucian even think of coming to see him? I said this ages ago. He's not a good person, and you should keep Dr. Jarvis away from him. That man is a hypocrite. I could smell him from a mile away. His intentions toward Dr. Jarvis are far from innocent, exclaimed Colby in a rage. What did he do to Dr. Jarvis? Colby's obvious concern for Roxanne made Lucian feel very displeased. He was unhappy that this came from another man. However, the thought of Roxanne lying helplessly on the hospital bed forced Lucian to suppress his anger. The irony was that Lucian did consider himself quite lucky. Since Colby reacted so strongly, it shows that he still cares about Roxanne. That also means he'll do his best to treat her. At the thought of this, Lucian recounted the story of Roxanne's drugging to Colby. Jack drugged her by burning a herb and letting her inhale it. The drug took effect last evening, and Roxanne has been unconscious ever since. Obliged to do at the mention of Roxanne's condition, the hostility that radiated off Colby gradually subsided. The experts I've hired are speculating that Jack used a specific herb, but they cannot determine exactly which medicinal herb it is, said Lucian. Colby noticed one minor detail. Did you ask Jack? How else could Lucian have known so much about the nature of the drug? Lucian nodded. I think Jack won't give in and save Dr. Jarvis so easily, scoffed Colby. He must have come up with a demand so unreasonable that you're not willing to follow through, even for her sake. That's why you thought of me. Having said this, Colby leaned back in his chair. If your love for Dr. Jarvis only extends that far, then I have no reason to help you. Surely you're aware that we are rivals competing for her affection, Mr. Farwell. Lucian furrowed his brows as he said, if he had made demands, I would have complied with them. However, Jack is deliberately stalling for time with me. I can't wait any longer. What Lucian meant was that Jack had never made any demands in the first place. All he was doing was toying with Lucian using Roxanne's life as bait. Colby raised a brow and finally sat up straight again. That's because he's a blasted hypocrite. Of course, we can't count on him. After speaking, Colby narrowed his eyes and fell into deep thought. Since the drug was administered through breathing, then how did Jack leave the room unscathed when he was in the same place as Dr. Jarvis? He must have ingested an antidote prior to the meeting. I'm guessing that the antidote is only effective for a limited time. Otherwise, Jack would have been affected by the drug as well after prolonged exposure to it. This conjecture was consistent with what the researchers and experts had raised, but somehow, Colby was more observant. It was only then that Lucian finally believed why Linda said that Colby had an extra edge when it came to such matters. Colby was quickly immersed in his own thoughts. He mumbled the names of a few medicinal herbs and tried to determine if they were possible antidotes. In seconds, he could visualize if they were correct or not. Lucian, on the other hand, had no experience in this field. All he could do was wait for an outcome with bated breath. After a while, Colby's expression turned unsightly as he said, "There are hundreds of medicinal herbs with varying properties. If you're not careful, you can accidentally choose herbs that are in a state of flux, constantly enhancing and inhibiting the other. I need to be very cautious. For the time being, I'm unable to be certain." Lucian's expression grew even more grim. "But since Jack likely has something he wants in exchange, I don't think the efficacy of the drug is virulent. For now, Dr. Jarvis will be fine. Give me 2 days. In 2 days' time, come and see me again," Colby added. Since Colby had a certain understanding of Jack and knowledge of medicinal herbs, he was still confident that a solution could be found. 2 days? Lucian was not sure if he could wait that long. However, all he could do was agree since there was no other way. "I understand. Thank you, Dr. Galloway," said Lucian. Colby nodded, but there was something on his mind. Just as Lucian was about to turn and leave, he stopped him in his tracks. "Mr. Farwell." Lucian stopped and turned to face Colby. "Is there anything else, Dr. Galloway?" Colby gave him the once-over, and his gaze rested firmly on Lucian's face. He thought about how excessive his actions had been toward Roxanne and how furious Lucian had been at the time. If anything, Colby assumed Lucian would have hated him to the core. Regarding his willingness to help, Lucian could have easily framed it as something he was obliged to do. However, he never imagined Lucian to be so courteous. This came as a surprise to him. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.